as you can see, hopefully it's not too bright, but the sun is out, is shining. It's about in the upper 50s, almost 60. So as soon as I'm done making this video, I'm on the motorcycle and I'm going for a ride. But I wanted to show you something that I got in the mail this week. It's an album I've been looking for quite some time. Some of you may be like, so what? Big deal. Nothing new, nothing special. But to me, it's just one of these that I've been looking for a long time. And right now I'm on this quest of finding all these early 90s, late 80s bands that I listened to when I was growing up. You know, the songs when I was in my 20s that I partied to and really enjoyed. And this is one of them. Happened to find it on Discogs. I ordered it. It came in perfect condition. And that is Danish. This is probably in my top 5 all-time groups. Unfortunately, they only have 3 albums. Well, 4 if you count. One of their albums is a live version of this particular one. So it's like, it's almost like a one-hit wonder type group. But they did make 3 albums. One of my all-time favorite groups. I just love this music. It's just, it has got some funk and some twang to it, rockabilly, a little bit of folk thrown in there. It's like, if you've never, I'm probably sure you've heard their main song, Don't Crash the Car Tonight. But if you haven't, take a listen to it. This is like the best album. It's like in my top 5 all time. It doesn't matter. One of the things about this band, if you're not familiar with them, and it's actually a pretty good read, if you do a search for Mary's Danish, LA Times, there's an article that came out, I think it might have been even in the late 90s, maybe early 2000s. It's been a while since I read it, but it's actually a real good read on how artists can get treated by record labels. And if you don't know the history of this group, they were actually, basically, when they formed, they just shot up to popularity in a very short amount of time. And they were on the Chameleon label, and were actually offered just a 1-year contract, a 1-album contract. Let's do this album, let's get it out, and then you're released after that, do whatever you want, which is like unheard of in the record industry. But it was like a gift given to them to spend the money, put the album out, do what you can do, and then either we'll talk later or you can go, someone else can pick you up, whatever. It was just a one-shot deal. And they took it, and they became real famous. They appeared on David Letterman, Jay Leno. I don't know if it was at this time or after the next label. This band toured with the Red Hot Chili Peppers. They opened for them. Jane's Addiction. Just a really cool group with a good story. And then, once that contract ran out and the year was over, they had to decide if they were going to go with another label, which one it was going to be. And this is just one of those epic stories in music history where they picked the wrong label. The label that picked them up, from reading about everything that went into it, basically fed them a line of BS. Which is, probably happens all the time. But they promised them everything in the world, and then in the end didn't deliver. But they decided that they were going to go with Morgan Creek Records, signed up with them, and they thought everything was good. They started getting money. They started making their other albums, which they only made 2 other albums. One is like Circa, and then American Standard. which I haven't found the other two yet, but they're similar. If you like the sound of this and you've checked it out, you'll probably like the others too. They're pretty similar. It's the same kind of vibe. But so once they got in there and they started touring, things were okay. And then the record label just kind of, well, we've got it. We'll do on other stuff. And we're not going to spend the money in promoting or helping them do whatever. And so they were kind of just left on their own. I mean, even though their albums were doing well, they were asked to tour, like I said, with Jane's Addiction. They've touring with the Red Hot Chili Peppers. But their management, the record label, just left them on their own. I mean, it got to the point where they weren't even making enough money to survive, so they started making t-shirts to sell at concerts to be able to pay their bills and stuff, because the record label wasn't doing it. And then the record label in the end ultimately tried to sue them for making the t-shirts, because the record label's owner's son has a t-shirt company or whatever, and they wanted to have a bigger cut of what it was, so they threatened to sue him. It was just a mess. And it's just one of those reads that you can just realize just how terrible it can really be to deal with some of the record labels. Not all of them are like that. It's just a lot of them. It's just a tragic story for a band that had everything going for it, had the sound that everyone was looking for. They had plenty of music to come, but they had no support. And the label that they signed with didn't really care. All they were interested in is making money. They hired as many cool labels as they could find, threw them all out there, see which ones would make them money, and just left everyone to fend for themselves. And then in the end, it turned out being that their contract was coming to an end, and they thought they'd finally be free of them and move on. And Morgan Creek, out of spite or whatever, extended, renewed. I don't know all the details about how that worked, why they couldn't just get out of it. But that signaled the end of, they just said, okay, we're done, we quit. And then people went their separate ways. Part of their band one of their band members went to, I think it was Rob Rule. A couple others went off to do some other projects. And then the two lead singers just called it quits for the time being. But anyway, that was the end. But it's just like, if you want to read a little bit about the inside dealings of how an up-and-coming group or artist can make it big in the record industry, and then also just lose everything from no fault of their own other than making the wrong choices, that's a good read. So search Mary's Danish, LA Times, and there'll be an article, which is also kind of strange too. This article, I'm pretty sure it came out in like the late 90s, maybe like 2000 or right around there. But you can just tell the difference in the way the internet has changed, in the way that websites are formatted and everything. It's just because this looks like something that was like done in the early days of the internet, just the way it's lined up on the page. But anyway, search that out, you'll find it pretty good. So let's go back to the record here a little bit. If you're not familiar with this group, they have a sound that's just different. I mean, I really like it because they got that slabby bass, guitar, funk sound, real snappy lyrics. It's two gals that harmonize very well and not like anybody else. It's Gretchen Seeger and Jay Ritter. And it's just one of those iconic duo female voices that are easily recognizable if you know the group. You know, kind of like the Indigo Girls, where nobody can quite replicate what they do with the two singers. And it's the same with Mary's Danish. I mean, it's a sound that I haven't heard in any other groups, and it's one of my favorite I guess sounds of the music. My dogs are killing each other out there. It sounds like. But anyway, and it's like the whole album is like this. It's all good. It's all similar. There's not a bad song on here. I'll go ahead and put a couple links in so you can check it out. Some of my favorite songs on here if you want to give it a listen. But it's an interesting group. I'm glad I finally found this. I'm still looking for the other two, Circa and American Standard. I'm not sure if the other two are on vinyl. This one was hard enough to find. It's not like they sold quite a few out. I think it was like 350,000 print albums. I don't know if that includes CDs and cassettes or if that's just the vinyls records. But you know, I've seen this a few times in the past, but it's usually trashed up and pretty scratched up. This is a mint copy. Almost brand new. I don't even think it was played. Chameleon label. I'm not going to take it out of the deal. Black vinyl. Nothing fancy. It's not 180 grain, but it's not exactly real flimsy either. But a very good record. A good one to add to my collection of the late 80s, early 90s groups that were my favorite. This is still within probably my top 5 all-time records of everything I have. So a few more to look for, but we're getting down there. Go check them out if you haven't listened to them. I'm sure you've probably heard some of the songs, but if you haven't and you like that funky guitar, real tight bass with it, slap string. Have a good day. The weather's out and I'm going on a motorcycle. Talk to y'all later. Have a good week.
Hey you! Fathead!
So real quickly, I just want to add a couple highlights to it. I probably really should make some notes at some point in time because I don't really like to do the editing and stuff, and I just want to put it up there, add a couple little things in there, and be done with it. But then I forget so many things that I want to say, and it's just like but anyway, I just want to go back a little bit about the trouble that the band had with the record label. And it's just like when you read it, it's just like, that seriously cannot happen. I mean, it's like, really? When they were on tour, they were supposed to have like, I guess it's like standard to have like a PR rep going into the cities you're going to be playing in ahead of time and setting up interviews like with radio stations, you know, record signings at record stores, whatever, appearances and stuff like that, where they get to some cities and it's like, nobody knew that they were even coming. They wouldn't have posters for the group to, you know, to put up saying, hey, this band is going to be playing, opening for the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And it's like, you know, other than the main announcements, they wouldn't have any advertising at all because the record company didn't spend the money or provide the person to do it. It's like crazy. Or they'd go to a record store that they were supposed to have a signing that day, and the record store wasn't notified what exact day they were going to be there. And they'd show up, and it's like, they didn't have records for them at all. They didn't know they were going to be there. They were scrambling around. They'd have to go try and search and see if any record stores had records in that they could get. So they could... It was just unreal. And just like, I can only imagine the frustration that this band had in dealing with all that. And it's just mind-boggling. There's other examples of, if I remember, where their PR person that was supposed to be doing all this, basically the company didn't pay him very well, and there's times where he had to hitch a ride with them on their bus because he couldn't afford a rental car ticket, and he's supposed to be going ahead of them setting all this stuff up. And it's just the stuff that this group went through and endured and tried to do the best that they could with the situation and still were popular. I mean, and it just came to the point of the record company just absolutely failed and let them down. And it's like, who knows where they would be today if they actually had the support and the promotion, even a basic minimum promotion that, I mean, this was one of the top up and coming bands of like the 90s. And the record company just said, we don't care. It's like they didn't make enough money right out of the bat that they weren't even going to try. Now, Morgan Creek, I did a little checking on them. Morgan Creek is a company, if you look at their catalog of records, most of what they make is soundtracks for movies. Robin Hood, I was trying to think of, what's another one? Oh, there's a couple others in there, but I guess Robin Hood is like the big one that made them a ton of money. I was like, what? Robin Hood? I don't know. But anyway, so they're comparing, well, this group didn't make enough money as like Robin Hood, so it's like, sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. And I mean, it's like, yeah, if you would have made the minimum effort, this group could have been one of the great groups of the 90s. Who knows where they would have ended up. And one of the other things I neglected to mention, one of the lead singers actually formed a group called Battery Acid, if you've ever heard of that group. Now, I listened to a few of their songs. That's a lot edgier, a little bit hard, more what I would consider grunge. Not anything like this at all, but they were still pretty good. But it's like a never-ending saga with them, because that group Battery Acid was signed with Geffen Records, who in the end didn't really like their edgy sound and wanted them to make a pop song, or less edgy, more acceptable to a wider range. And they did, and it sold well, but that just left a very bad taste in their mouth, and they just, it's like, we're just not. That's not who we are. We don't want to be told how to do it, and that was just it. That was just the end of anything that had to do with the founders and the original people that started Mary's Danish. So it's kind of a tragic story, and it's just one of those that's kind of an eye-opener in how the record industry deals with people. It's not all of them. Some of them do real well, and then it's like, at the same time, when you're an artist who's just starting out and someone dangles that contract in front of you, just like, yes, we finally made it, we're going to get there, and then it's like, it's not what it was not what it's promised to them. So there's a lot of work and a lot of effort. And that's why you can see so many up and coming artists, they just say, as soon as they're able to, they say, you know what, we can do this ourselves. We can start our own label, do it our way, and not shit on all of the artists that we sign with. So and I have several examples of artists that I really like that have done that same thing. We'll do that in a later edition here and talk about it. There's one particular I want to talk about, but we'll save that for a later time. So again, just wanted to add that real quick. Now I'm out.